Hello and welcome to Playwright, the podcast about creating and sharing new ways to play. My name is Ryan Hamann. You can call me H.
And I'm Win Stewart. Another day, another dollar. All right, that's enough. I'm Ryan Quintal, and you can call me Q.
It's funny you go into that song. I was thinking of You Can Call Me Al, that song performed by Paul Simon and Chevy Chase, if the music video is to be believed.
Oh my God, I don't know about this song.
You should check out the music video. It's fairly minimalist, but it's a real treat. There's a moment in it that gets me every time, and I think you'll know it when you see it.
Okay, I'm going to go check it out.
Anyways, but before you do that, you're not getting out of it that easy. We have to, I know, this eternal drudgery that is this creative project that we love doing.
I would love to do the podcast, but I've got a music video to watch, so I'm in for the night.
All right, let's pitch some video games. This first one that I've got for you today is a simple one. This is essentially a soccer game or a football game, depending on where you live. But it uses like pinball mechanics. So you get like multi-ball, and you can have those little narratives that occur by kicking the balls into certain areas on the course. And ultimately you are trying to get it into the opponent's goal. But there's big kind of like wraparound towers and pits that the balls can go into, and ways to earn some of those additional power-ups like you would get on a pinball table. So let's leave that there, and let's see where we can get with that. Let's go ahead and start the clock.
Well, I love the idea of, as an American, very selfishly spicing up soccer in a way that makes it a little bit more, because there's so much field in that sport that it can become a little too, I don't know if it's slow or something, but it's just so panned out and everybody looks so small that I would love to have like more interesting things spread throughout the field. And I think that the pinball method or the pinball way of thinking is so much more interesting than I think you see a lot of the games from the 90s have the bent of like, put landmines in the field and everyone's a skeleton, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I kind of want a constantly evolving field, so you're never really comfortable with just a flat pitch. Instead of there being like a constant set of obstacles on the course, I would want bumpers to pop up every few minutes and stay there for a little while and then go back into the ground, and things shift around a little bit to kind of keep it moving, keep people on their toes.
What I really like is there's the potential here to maybe have this be a one-on-one game too, right? Where I know like usually you have a team in soccer, but you now have things that will sort of move the ball around for you. And if your kind of average movement speed is quick enough, I think it can be very compelling to sort of use the bumpers and the traps and contraptions to help you advance the ball as much as you would trying to deal with passing to an AI player throughout.
Yeah, it almost makes me think of there was a game that we used to play as kids, and it was like a long plastic board, and you had these little discs with marbles in the middle that would get them. You can kind of sail them down the board almost like a shuffleboard or something like that, but they would have little rubber bands bumpers on the side. You try to bump them off the bumpers and get them into the opponent's scoring area.
Does pinball have an alternate ways of scoring? I know there's kind of ways to earn like extra balls, and sometimes there's like multiple balls in the air. I love the idea of earning a second soccer ball and then there being some real, like I can see two people just dashing as quick as they can with two balls on the court to like get to the other side.
Yeah, that could be fun. That would be also, if you had like a full team set up, that would be difficult because there would be multiple players that might need your input at any given time.
Yeah.
Perhaps you could kind of switch off between players and let the AI take the ones that you're not controlling at that time, or if it was just a one-on-one thing and there were two balls and each player had one, and they would just kind of ignore each other and run towards the goal, which wouldn't be as interesting because it would just be two unguarded fielders just going for their score.
I'm trying to think now of, it doesn't have to be totally one for one with pinball, but I love like the initial ball launch as a sort of starting off point. So, I think soccer or football has those rules where I know if it gets kicked out of bounds, you can kind of launch the ball from, or throw it really to another member of your team. I wonder if those could be used as like the launching moments, because like it would seem to me that like a face-off might not necessarily be the most satisfying way to kick off this sort of this match.
Yeah, if you want to keep things frantic. Also, I suppose you could just plaster a whole bunch of drawings of Simpsons characters along the entire pitch, just like a pinball table. But we'd have to think about that.
What do you think are some smart ways to earn bonuses in a format like this?
I mean, the obvious ones are like score multipliers that last for a little while, and so if you kick it into one of the not necessarily the goal, but bumper or there's lights, and I'm sorry I don't have the pinball terminology. I know there's probably pinball fans out there that know exactly what I should be saying right now, but I cannot. But there's like rows of plastic things that look like teeth, and you hit them one at a time, and if you get the whole row, then that's usually unlocks some kind of a bonus. And so you can have little like mini games like that, things that might be equally as incentivizing as going straight for the goal, which would probably give you more points in this version of the game if there are alternate ways to score points. So if you're on the defending team, then you might not know just what your opponent is planning at any given time. You might want to guard him a little bit more closely, or you might want to position more fielders in a different location on the field because there's other places that the person with the ball might be going to.
Well, I think I would love to see maybe potentially also an obstacle like there's always this kind of mechanic in pinball games that is like table tilt or machine tilt. I don't know how to necessarily like implement it. Maybe if the crowd is cheering enough for you, you're doing well enough, there's kind of like a tilt towards your side. I don't know. But like maybe when the crowd is really into it or it's a tie game, like the shouting and the cheering and the like foot stomping of the crowd can actually cause the whole ground to wiggle a little bit and just add a little bit more fun to the whole thing.
Well, it's my understanding in the pinball video games that I played and in some pinball in real life that I've played, the tilt mechanic is kind of a cheat that it gives you. Usually it gives you like a game over if you try it too many times in the video game versions. And, what it is just kind of bashing up against the table to get the ball to change course. And so if you were to just give that to the crowd, which nobody's controlling, then it would be kind of a passive benefit. Whereas if you give each player like maybe 2 times per game that they can hit one of the buttons on the controller and it just kind of jolts the entire field and all the characters fall over and have to get up again and have to scramble for the ball again. And that would be kind of a fun way to do things.
Can you imagine using the tilt if you're like, say you hit the ball with your head? And I think we're also going to need, by the way, some bumpers or some, traps and stuff like above you, because you can kind of hit a soccer ball pretty high in the air. If we can take that and like say I would have almost have gotten it in the top right-hand corner or something of the goal and to, at the last minute, kind of kick the entire world just slightly to the left and nail a shot that I otherwise would have missed would be so satisfying.
And maybe instead of a goalie, you have just those 2 bumpers that you're always controlling with like the with the R and L buttons.
Yeah, that's really cool. And that way you kind of can be around the field and sort of play your own defense from afar. Like often weirdly, when I'm thinking about this game and I'm thinking about Rocket League and sort of the positions that you find yourself in. And often it's more advantageous to play a little bit off the goal, but with the goal in sight, and letting things like that pan out as opposed to actually being in that goal yourself. So the ability to, have some what I don't even know what they're called at the bottom of it. Flippers? Are they flippers?
Yeah, flippers or bumpers probably. Flipper sounds right though.
Yeah, so having those and exactly 2 buttons, maybe your triggers or something dedicated to controlling those would be really cool. Well, one of the things I think would be fun to bring in from pinball is you can now have soccer fields that are super themed, right? So now you can do these cool licensed soccer fields and you can do things like, how they have those sort of caged like tracks that the ball can kind of find itself into. So all sorts of, I don't want to necessarily bring it too much into the Rocket League realm, but some level of aerial or anti-grav sort of stuff is really neat to me.
Yeah, like alternate pathways that you can kick a ball into and know that it's going to be deposited down the field. And they work in both directions, so they don't really give one or the other team an advantage, but you definitely have to have a person there on the other end to pick it up, or else the other team's going to scoop it.
Yeah, and all of these pinball games are usually free to play or super cheap, and then they monetize through these partnerships and people buying different tables. So I love the idea of being able to play, soccer essentially on the Death Star and, hitting things off of trash can droids and, the John Williams score blaring in the background. That to me really actually feels like a different experience, almost as if you shrunk yourself down and put yourself into a pinball table, right?
Yeah, well, it's all Austin Powers tables as far as all the pinball bars that I've been to. So
yeah, 1 through
Austin Powers and the Addams Family gets a surprising amount of traction in the pinball space.
Yeah, and voice actors that don't do a good job doing imitations. That's important too.
Like, yes, baby.
Sure, baby. That's terrible.
Do I make you horny, Randy?
Yes,
anyways,
you do.
That is enough time we've spent with that one.
That's the best ending to a session we've ever had.
We will have to call this game, let's call it Multiball. That's kind of a fun way to put it. What do you have for us today?
Man, I hate to change the tone of things on you, but I was thinking a lot about your game that you pitched a while ago that was a kind of mystery call-in, you're a radio DJ.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought to myself that's really interesting, the idea of people calling in and you being able to talk with them. And I love the whole music angle of yours, but I was wondering if there was and I'm sure another game has done this, but a way to kind of transplant that and put you in the seat of a 911 operator during some crisis. And I was thinking in my head, obviously with some of the horrible stuff that happened in 2017, wouldn't it be kind of interesting and a little bit harrowing to be sort of an emergency operator during the time of a flood or something, when you're trying to guide people through protocols and maybe all you have at your disposal is, sort of rules and procedures and safety stuff that you have to sort of scramble and look up as you respond to people on the phone. Or potentially, since I've actually experienced this, I don't think 911 has this service at the moment, but the idea of doing it through a sort of virtual text chat line and having to deal with multiple chats at the same time, a la, some sort of customer service system. So that's the general idea of it. But as always, I'm hoping we find that workable game in there.
All right, let's start the clock. The way that I don't want to take this is just doing a GPS for ambulances again, because we did that a couple weeks ago. So I'll have to take this in a different direction, but it's interesting receiving those multiple text conversations. I think for this to be an interesting game, they would have to be somehow jumbled up, or maybe kind of there's something wrong with your machine that's kind of interweaving the messages together, and you have to make sure that the right help goes to the right people.
It's a big thing. I used to do customer service, and one of the big things when you're handling chats from people is the sort of management of having the constant check-in, not letting any particular chat go on too long or linger, or else the person starts to sort of panic that you're not there or maybe make a bad decision. So, someone might say that that's exotic babysitting, but those things can really matter,
Yeah. So obviously in a 911 center, pretty much lives are on the line almost no matter what call you're getting. So I'm thinking of what is a good way to do this without it getting super bleak very quickly. Because, if you have somebody calling in a robbery or somebody calling in a home invasion or a fire or something, the failure states kind of speak for themselves. And I can imagine that would be pretty stressful for the players pretty quickly.
Yeah, I called it harrowing because I think it's going to be tough to turn this into something that doesn't just depress the hell out of you. But I almost wonder if there can be an aspect to it that is partially it's the incoming call, and then there's a part of the game or a shift in mode or something that kind of waxes and wanes that allow you to maybe go out and follow up on people, like call them to make sure they're okay, or to, if somebody said, please check in on, or please call my mother, let her know that I'm all right. And being able to deliver some good news along with the job. I know that that's not really in the purview of a typical sort of 911 operator, but maybe something like that to kind of answer and actually be able to celebrate sort of success.
You know, a way this could work is like the Android and iPhone game called Lifeline, where you're texting with an astronaut who's stuck on Mars or something like that, and he's basically just asking you for instructions for where he should head next and what to do next. And basically, you know, it's all not, well, yeah, I guess it is kind of in real time, that you just receive messages on your phone every once in a while, and they usually have a choice between a couple of things that you can instruct this astronaut to do. And I can see walking people through kind of emergency scenarios in that style. And maybe the twist is that you have multiple chats happening all at once. So you kind of have to remember who's who at any given time. So you have to recognize the names or recognize the scenarios somehow. It's not going to be as, it's not just going to be one person talking to it at a time.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that, and this is real, maybe if you experience this, but in that sort of multiple persons or multiple calls at the same time world, you're also dealing with literal timers that are ticking down on you, that essentially if the person has said something to you or checked in with you and you haven't checked back in with them, they go from sort of green to yellow to red to notify you, hey, you haven't spoken to this person or you haven't given them any feedback in, too long a time. And so the idea of not only being able to deliver advice, because I think you can deliver advice in a way that is, pretty straightforward. You'll generally have a quick sense of what to do, ideally, but then to add in the layer of, hey, this has to be done in, these people have 5 minutes potentially to save a loved one is an interesting time crunch. And the time crunch is like, what mistakes would you make or have them make in that period of time?
Yeah, so you have to kind of gain information from them as to like location and stuff like that, while also trying to walk them through the situations that they find themselves in at the moment. And maybe there's a level of prioritization of contacts as well, because like police emergencies, you would need to dispatch the police in 5 minutes, but medical emergencies, you'd need to dispatch the ambulance in 2 minutes. And you have to very quickly ascertain from what they say, and they're panicking and they can't, talk straight like a regular conversation. You have to ascertain what type of need they have and what type of emergency service that would require.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. And maybe even, you're dealing with some aspect of having to escalate these things or ask for help. The idea of, there's always this moment when you have to give someone information, but that information you don't have, you're actually waiting on someone else to give you that information, is these moments that, while may seem just kind of like pain in the butt things, if it's a very mundane situation, if you ratchet up the drama in that way where you can hear the audio of this person, that obviously this has to be extremely well written or extremely well voice acted, right?
Yeah, I've been going through Divinity Original Sin 2 recently, and that is fully voice acted. Like pretty much every line of dialogue has voice acting to it, and I've been incredibly impressed by the amount of work that must go into voice acting a game with a script that immense. So that would be quite an undertaking, and I was thinking just this entire description makes it sound like this type of game would work really well on mobile. And so maybe prioritizing voice acting wouldn't be the most prudent place to put our money if this is going to be a mobile release where a lot of people are going to be playing it on the bus or
with their phones on mute
scenario. Yeah. But it would definitely add a lot to it.
Yeah, I wonder if there's also, are you familiar with the Devolver games that came out recently, His Majesty or Her Majesty?
Yeah.
I think the idea of being able to put it in sort of a touch-based format where you can quickly, gesture or something to triage answers to these people would be very interesting, kind of swiping between the 2 or 3 conversations at a time, or, maybe even 4 or 5 in the really, the most difficult parts, and have, just canned responses that you can quickly tap and get feedback from. Could be a really satisfying way to think about how to interact with this thing.
I think, just so we have those names right, I think the game is called Reigns, and then the subtitle of the sequel is Her Majesty, but we might be thinking of different games, but just so they're both right out there.
No, you're absolutely right.
So what if at the same time,
one more thing, why not? Yeah.
You also moonlight as a pizza boy or something. You take calls for pizza place, and so you're taking all of those at the same time just to earn some extra money to make ends meet, because it's expensive to live in the city. And so you have to make sure not to mess up your pizza orders with your ambulance orders and not send the pizza truck to an active crime scene.
Man, that's interesting. And especially, I like that it becomes absurdist to the point of giving you a real vehicle for levity throughout this thing. I mean, it would, to your earlier point, it does feel a little bit like, oh man, you're just everyone's dying, everyone's choking, everyone, needs some desperate amount of help.
There were some situations that could be diffused by a pizza, like a hostage situation.
Yeah, hey, send 10
accidentally
pizzas
send
down
a
here.
pizza, but actually that's what the person wanted. So everyone's safe and free to go. Whereas if you had sent the police, things would have escalated.
Yeah, I think that's cool and a smart way of diffusing those things. I wonder if you add on top of that, we kind of talked about the GPS before, but now you can add in the little weird pizza app builder type of thing into the whole swiping experience. So you're having like dire conversation, life-saving thing, and then make sure pepperoni's on the left-hand side and, pineapples on the right. One other thing I want to say to this is we washed over it really quickly, but in terms of absurdist stuff, I'm sure 911 gets as much, if not more, crank and awful calls as they do real emergency calls.
I hope
depending
it's not
on
more.
Yeah, well, yeah,
I feel like that is actually a criminal offense.
But it's one of those things where I think, there is room for, in the fictional environment, to, not have it feel just completely depressing.
As Bart Simpson calls in.
See more butts is here to stay.
Looking for Mike Roch.
Yep.
Anyways, what is the name of this game?
And now I'm tempted to add the pizza thing in there for sure. Just to get it a more fun name. Maybe we just simply call it Triage,
Triage.
That's essentially what you're doing.
Okay. Well, Triage it is. Anyways, we have a community submission from one of our listeners. This is from MHNinjaBear. You'll remember that name from the writer of our first iTunes review.
Yeah.
Always holds a place in the heart of any podcaster, their first review. Anyways, MHNinjaBear says, recently I've been playing through each generation of Pokemon and collecting a new living Pokedex, having one of each Pokemon, all 802. MHNinjaBear, I will take a digression and say that I too am on this quest, and I am extremely close. I'm missing a couple of those go and get them from inside of a GameStop mysticals and mythicals rather. That just bugs the hell out of me. I need to fill my decks, but I'm just so close. But
This is madness. This is madness.
Yep. Anyways, because of the eShop releases of Red, Blue, Yellow, Gold, and Silver, I am currently on the 5th gen, Black and White 1 and 2. It has been fun exploring the different regions, but as a longtime fan, I thought it would be cool if there was some way to interweave the stories without creating a monster of a game, pun probably intended there, and has you visiting every region and losing the wonderful balance that Game Freak has in each game. This is where my idea comes in. This game would have you inserting your cartridges or save files into it so that it could read your progress in the region and the number of Pokemon you caught. The Pokemon would be displayed in an environment which puts each of them as 3D models that may interact in a small degree with the nature around, maybe like a zoo. On the plaque in front of the exhibit would be a picture of the trainer who caught it and the region game that it was caught in. The second part of the game would be a main building where you could enter with a terminal that would give you challenges to complete in each game, such as only catching Gen 1 Pokemon from the Kanto region, and so forth and so on with the other generations. It could also have rewards for battling through a region with only one Pokemon in your party, or only using one type of Pokemon, such as all Dark-type team. These rewards would be either trophies on a shelf, or maybe ways of making the Pokemon Zoo you are trying to complete look more interesting. This idea would require a great deal of effort to make 802 different 3D models and unique animations, and finding a way for a system to read Game Boy, GBA, DS, 3DS, and eShop games may be difficult, but it would add an exciting flair to an already kind of crazy completion habits. Wow, that's a big one. Let's start the clock and see where we can go with that. Q, how many Pokemon games have you played?
I have played Red, Blue, Yellow, Black, White. Well, I guess I should say one from each. So I played Blue, okay. I played Yellow, I played White, I played X, or whatever the blue equivalent of the XY was, and then Moon. So I love Pokemon, and in a lot of ways, MHNinjaBear here is talking about the Pokemon game I've always wanted to play. I think he's, which is essentially a big, huge, maybe open world, maybe not, Pokemon game that is really expansive, 3D, almost feels like an MMO, save for it doesn't have to be multiplayer, except for battling, right? And having all these places and gyms and kind of the entire thought that is Pokemon in one place. And I think that there's ways to do what he's talking about that isn't necessarily have the cartridges, right? Like Nintendo has that Pokemon Bank service, or Game Freak does, that lets you sort of have multiple generations of Pokemon stored and saved over time. But yeah, this is the Pokemon game that I've been waiting for, and I'm hoping that maybe, obviously hoping beyond hope, that the next thing that happens on the Switch is going to be a foundation that could lead to something like this in the future.
So I think that we got different impressions as we were reading this pitch, which is great. This could lead to taking it in different ways. We're not trying to faithfully recreate exactly what has been written into us. We're trying to take this in different directions and expand upon it. But anyways, I read this as this is a Pokemon zoo that you're building up. It's essentially like a Pokemon bank that you can just kind of walk through and interact with and admire your Pokemon a little bit more than just sprites on a screen, which I really like. That's really cool. But I didn't interpret this as being like a fully 3D model of the entire world. I think that all the challenges that you've been given by the game and it would reward you for
games.
Yeah, right. Going to happen in those games. And so you would have to go back to the original cartridge and beat those games there, or trigger those challenges, or it could even write code that could interact with those games to make them play in different ways. It can kind of force a Nuzlocke run for a trophy that you'd be going for, or something like that. So it's kind of like, in my mind anyways, a more fully fleshed out version of Bank plus an achievement system. And I don't know, it's interesting, and I would love to I would love to have some more meaningful way to interact with my Pokemon. The thing that bugs me, and this isn't about one of the main core Pokemon games, but because the core Pokemon games lately have been actually getting really good about this, but in Pokemon Go, at least when I stopped playing it, you couldn't like release your Pokemon from the Pokeballs after you caught them. And like the coolest thing in that game is like seeing them in the world. And the only time that you'd be seeing them in the world is when when you're trying to catch them, which is like a high pressure environment. They might run away. You'd want to get it done quickly. And so I would have
at least
loved,
let you take these things out, let you pet them, let you brush them like you do in the sort of more modern games.
Yeah, or at least just to be able to kind of project it into your living room whenever you want to just look at your Haunter or Charizard, just to check in and say hi.
Yeah, then you could take a selfie with Squirtle, and that's all I want to do.
Yeah, you can get a whole like photo mode going up. But anyways, that's Pokemon Go. That's entirely separate.
I think that your version of it and my version of it are, yes, they're different, but they're totally, there's some shared stuff. So let's talk through some
compatible.
Yeah.
I think the zoo is the biggest thing that has been kind of brought to this idea. So the central depository of Pokemon. It sounds interesting. I would love it if it's not just a passive experience as well, but maybe you could have like a zoo tycoon built on top of it where you're arranging your Pokemon for people to come in and admire, and you draw crowds and you're trying to make money that way. And maybe the money that you make there would be fed back into some of the Pokemon games, or maybe you can, the experience that your Pokemon gain from being matched with others of the similar type, or by putting on shows or being displayed in nice environments, would level them up so that they'll be better fighters when they're injected back into their respective games.
Yeah.
I could see that going in a lot of different directions. It could be cool.
I even like the idea of taking these Pokemon, like I have this massive collection of like he said here, 800 plus creatures, to have those all maybe be able that I could like set up like, okay, now give me a Sims mode where I build and actually make a little gym. And then I say, okay, this group of Pokemon are here and here. And, you could attach them like maybe you're loaning them out to handlers or something that are going to handle them for you. But essentially a gym designer that lets you make and host your own series of gyms and create gauntlets for other players to sort of go through and make different challenges like that. But yeah, I think it, Pokemon since the beginning of the lore have always been stored in a PC, which has always been strange to me. But if you can fit all your creatures in a PC or whatever, or this bank, I like the idea of maybe even thinking about the zoo as you yourself going into the cyber realm, going into the PC to manage this stuff. Yeah,
that could be interesting because I think we meet Bill in the original Pokemon game. I think he turned himself into a Pokemon by both trying to inject each other into a PC or something like that. I don't remember how that all went down, but that was a strange encounter for sure.
He was trying to get missing number is how
That's right. I want them to make that an official Pokemon now. I mean, it's been a part of the Pokemon mythos since the very beginning, you would think. But oh well, if it was the Mortal Kombat developers, he would be a Pokemon in Gen 2.
Oh, yeah, no kidding.
They wouldn't have waited a moment on that one.
Okay, let's say we'll follow this down a little bit. I jump inside the PC. One of the things that always makes me think, because now Pokemon has gender as well, so I love the idea of almost, we call it a zoo. You're kind of building a Noah's Ark of Pokemon.
Okay.
Right? So you're like, okay, now I'm, I got a male and female of every single Pokemon and Pokemon type. And I am,
What about the non-binary Pikachus,
I know. Now you're getting into some complex stuff. We're going to have a whole Pikachu section of this. But
this is taking place inside of a PC, which means that PC culture reigns supreme here.
Okay, yeah. So everything's non-binary, but it is digital. So yeah, I like the idea of being able to, I think some of my favorite moments from the Pokemon cartoon is seeing, Pikachu and Geodude hanging out. And you and I both share a love of Pokemon Snap. which is great to see the Pokemon kind of living in an environment. And so, where I'd be drawing a ton of inspiration for this mode, the zoo type of mode, is from Viva Pinata.
Oh, yeah, right.
So I would love to see, now having a layer of you have to save up money and almost Animal Crossing style buy little, huts and toys and all these things to kind of keep your Pokemon enjoying their life. That could be really
nice. Yeah, the types of plants that would kind of reflect their societies that or not societies, but environments that they'd be comfortable in. Maybe planting a few tombstones and a creepy shed for all the ghost type Pokemon to hang out around. And
then also managing, right? Like they're just by nature certain Pokemon that shouldn't be near each other because they don't get along very well. So the idea of building out that space and kind of getting everybody to coexist peacefully. It's like, so the games themselves, the Pokemon games themselves are the layer of, hey, this is about catching and finding and the adventure. And then it all transfers into this meta layer of like, aside from the adventure, the reality is these things all have to live in harmony, and you got to make that happen too.
Yeah, it's that entire like wildlife refuge of Pokemon to just kind of live within the PCs. I like that.
Yeah, and
really
it's plus it's like it's nicer, and I think it works better in the fiction than like right now. I think the only explanation is like they always talk about the Pokemon are not captive. They're not just turned into bits and bytes and frozen in time. They seem to be, put somewhere, and they seem to be in a generally good mood about it. So actually having that be true and to have that humane level of treatment of these animals, because that's essentially what they are, unless they're a sword or something weird. Or a rock or a ghost or a bug. They, these things need, some TLC. So yeah, getting them stuff, and the Pokemon world already has food and different sorts of items and stuff that make these things happy. And
you have to really contend with whether or not Pokemon eat each other, but that's a question for another time. That's all the time that we have on that one. Thank you very much, MHNinjaBear. Who does not provide a name for this game, which is just fine. We will come up with something incredibly clever and satisfying, I'm sure.
And tell me what that is now.
I see, like PokePark is fun, but I feel like that's already a thing. How about like a Pokemon Safari? Is that a thing?
That's kind of what Pokemon Snap is. You're on a safari, but they don't call it that.
Okay, yeah, because there's the Safari Zone in previous Pokemon games. So that would be kind of nice, because we are kind of creating that same thing. So yeah, maybe Pokemon Safari isn't a bad thing to call it. Yeah, I would want it to be expansive as well. You want to get all of your Pokemon in there, not have to pick and choose your favorites. Thank you very much for that, MHNinjaBear. And if you would like to submit your own idea for us to discuss, then you can email that to playwrightcast@gmail.com, or you can go to our website, playwrightcast.com, where you can view previous episodes, and you can pitch your own game ideas in our handy pitching portal.
It's true. And remember, we are always looking for new and weird and challenging pitches. So if you want to pitch us in just a tweet, in just an image, we take it all and love it. And we also want to thank Mr. PROTODOME. I don't know if it goes by Mr. PROTODOME or not, but PROTODOME for the use of our theme song. It's Hello World. It's off the album Blue Noise. It's very good chiptune music, and you should listen to it.
Yes, and to take us out of the show today, I have a miniature idea to chew on throughout the week. This is based on kind of on our first pitch of today, and also based on an old Photoshop that I did a while back, and I just kind of thought about it again, and it made me giggle again. And that is kind of an offshoot of the Football Manager series. How about Foosball Manager? You have to pick the little plastic figures to kick that ball around on those poles.
Oh, I want to measure heights and everything. This is perfect.
Anyways, we'll see you next week. Thank you for listening.
Bye.